Start recording. Yes, so welcome everyone to the June 2024 NNIP showcase. We have all our lovely speakers present. Excited to get to those. But I think first, Leah has some announcements for the network, and I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Well, welcome everyone.
Sorry, I'm trying. The tab's in the way of like presenter mode.
I think if you hit F5.
F5, okay. Shortcuts, yes. Everybody see that?
Now we see your presentation view.
Your presenter mode. All right, let me turn that off.
Okay. Anyway, I think we have a few newer folks on the phone who haven't joined us, so I'm excited to have you all there. I think I just wanted to start first with the mission slide.
Yeah.
To center ourselves on why we're all here, that we have a shared mission to help communities use data to shape strategies and investments so that all neighborhoods are places people can thrive. And we're still seeing the regular view.
Okay.
Yeah.
Technically.
Different emails. I sent out a reminder this week. You can go on to the next one. Cool. Please share your ideas. We really want to have a number of concepts being developed, and we really thought this is an opportunity to expand how these ideas got developed. I think in the past, they usually sat with urban, but we know you all have a lot of good ideas out there and are interested from hearing from you what you want to work on and what how you want to direct our fundraising attention. So we tried to make some templates. Some of them are long, but the idea template is short. If you really want to dig into the other materials, that email has all that information. A couple of things that we are trying to work on at the moment, a couple of partners have come to us with ideas around a cross-site project on investor-owned properties. We're also trying to figure out something in the public health domain right now. Extreme heat is a potential option. Sorry, Cole is having trouble with audio. And gun violence as well. So let me pause so you can see those words. But I will drop the link to that form in the chat after I'm done with these slides so you can have it in front of you. And a couple of other things we're doing. We as part of the strategic planning process, we wanted to really re-engage the alumni members of NNIP. We really see them as an asset to the network, as a way to continue the relationship with individuals who have left NNIP partner organizations, but are still engaged and want to be engaged in the work, to bring insights from NNIP to their new organizations and to give that information from what they're learning in their new place back to the network. So we're trying to reinvigorate the alumni program, and we're going to be doing a survey of alumni to capture their current engagement levels and interest. I think that just went out, and we'll share back with all of you. I think the other thing we wanted to make the awareness of the alumni network and program more across the network, because I know that a number of people didn't realize we had an alumni network. So trying to make the awareness bigger so that as staff naturally transition out of your organization for whatever reason, we can think about still retaining that valuable talent in the network. We have a few upcoming webinars. Emily just sent out a note, I think yesterday, about these two. The first one is a intro to NNIP session. This is a webinar we hope to be doing like semi-annually now, to really, as an opportunity to onboard new or recent staff from your organization to the network so they can learn a bit about NNIP and how they might engage and benefit from the network, and give them a chance to network with one another. So please encourage any new staff members to attend that session. And then we did this intern networking session last year that was pretty successful. So we're going to repeat that as well as an opportunity for any interns working at your organization this summer or students to connect and learn from each other. And then we had another request for letting us know about any partner connections you made. So if that was helping somebody else out, or if you got help from somebody, we'd like to know that. This information we use as part of our process to figure out who might be our next network steward of the year. So we've extended the deadline for that. I will also drop the Google form for that into the chat after I'm done. And Nicole, next slide. Can you hear me now? Yes, excellent. And finally, register for the Detroit Partners meeting. We are planning preliminary sessions. I have a couple of them listed on the slide: investor-owned housing, racial wealth gap, data literacy, and something around arts and culture. In addition to the camp sessions where you all can set the agenda. You should have all received a registration link. If not, email nnip@urban.org for that link. And I think we have a deadline of registration in mid-August so that we can make sure everybody gets a hotel room. But let us know if you have any questions about the meeting. We are look forward to seeing everyone, and a big shout out to the Data Driven Detroit team. There is a hotel link. It comes when you sign up. You didn't get it? I think there might, well, I can double check the Eventbrite. You should have gotten an Eventbrite email that has it. But if not, I can share the hotel link. But thank you to Data Driven Detroit and their team for the big lift, helping us with the hosting. And I'll kick it back to you, Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Leah. And I have at least audio on my phone. That's I couldn't hear what Leah was saying, but yeah, I cut out there for a bit. But yes, so we're again very excited to have our 4 speakers from 3 partners today. Adam Poor from Morpsey in Columbus, and Amanda Phillips-Lucas and Cheryl Knott from BNIA in Baltimore, and Brandon Stanaway from MAPC in Boston. And we're going to start off with Adam on creating self-contained web maps using Python or QGIS. So I'll hand it over to Adam and stop sharing.
All right. Hello, everybody, and thank you, Cole, for the introduction. Let me get my screen shared. Okay. Hopefully you can all see my web browser.
Yes.
Yep. All right, good. All right, so today I'm going to focus on Python. I know Cole mentioned QGIS as well. What I'm going to show you is also possible in QGIS, and I'd be happy to share that with anyone afterwards if that's interesting to you all. But for the presentation, I'll focus on Python. This is what I'm going to talk about is a technique that I've used from time to time over the years. I don't use it a lot, but it's really handy in certain cases, and I'll explain some of those cases in a few minutes. There's a great library for Python called GeoPandas that makes it really easy to interact with spatial data. And one of the features of that library is to produce interactive web maps, and then you can save them to your hard drive and publish them on the web. And it's pretty cool. So without any further ado, let me dig in. Actually, what I'll do is I'm going to share the link to a GitHub repository. Okay, did that come through? Yeah. Okay, so everything I'm going to say is included in this GitHub repository. So if you ever thought, gee, could that have been a Jupyter notebook? The answer is yes. Yes, it can. All right. I'm going to skip over some of this content, which what you're looking at is just the Jupyter notebook. So I'm going to skip over some of the stuff and you can review it at your leisure. What I'd like to talk about is, first of all, the motivation, like why you might want to produce a standalone web map. the process and prerequisites for how you do it. I'm going to skip the data preparation for the example case that I'll describe here, but that is included in the notebook. And then I'll talk about, do a demonstration of how to create that web map and export it, and then how to publish it using GitHub pages in case you don't have a web server of your own to publish it on. These are the links to the content. That's the one I just shared. And this is what it ends up looking like when you're done. Of course, you can customize all sorts of things about it, and we'll play around with some of that. But you can see there are lots of different feature types. You know, you can include all the things you would normally find on a web map, including polygons, lines, points, and you can customize how they look. Okay, so why would you want to do this? Like I said, there's a few reasons. First of all, I should mention that there are commercial services. You guys are probably all aware of many of these, like ArcGIS Online, where you can publish spatial data and then display it on a web map. But maybe you don't have an ArcGIS Online account. Maybe the free services that are available don't suit your needs. So this gives you another option. I've found that commercial services, especially ArcGIS Online, makes it really inconvenient to share a restricted access map with parties who don't have an account in that service. You either have to make it public or you can share it with someone who has an account, but it's difficult to restrict access otherwise. And so that's a use case that I've used this for a lot. If you don't want to end up hosting the map forever, this allows you to just hand over the content and let the new owner deal with it. The web map that is produced this way is a leaflet web map, which means if you wanted to, you could dig into the JavaScript code and add all sorts of cool features. The intent of this presentation is to make it really easy using Python, but it provides a nice starting point if you wanted to add those features. This method allows you to automate production of the map so that you don't have to do it manually. Let's say you wanted to make 5 similar maps that are, just slightly different. This would be a very easy way to do that. You can track them in Git, track the different revisions in case you need tight control over that. And then finally, if you had a broader web app that you were trying to build, this allows you to easily embed the map in that custom web app. So just a few use cases. So what do you have to do? Well, first of all, you have to set up the environment, and we'll talk about prerequisites in a minute. But essentially, it's Python, and there's a few libraries that you need. Jupyter is not strictly necessary. You need to prepare the data, obviously. You need to prototype the web map. In this case, I use Jupyter. You wouldn't necessarily have to, but it makes it really convenient because you can see the changes in real time. Finally, you export the data to a standalone HTML file and then put it anywhere on the web where folks can access it. And there's different ways of doing that. So I mentioned you need a modern version of Python. You need the GeoPandas library, and probably there's a few other libraries that you would want, but that's the key one here. I mentioned Jupyter already. Sorry, I'm getting notifications. GitHub is a really convenient way to publish this, and I'll demonstrate that in a minute, but you could use any web server. And of course, you need some familiarity with Python, and if you're using GitHub, also with GitHub. But hopefully this note, you don't need a lot of depth of experience. You could probably tweak this notebook fairly easily to get the job done. All right, so now let me switch over to a live notebook, and I'll do a demo of this. All right, so what you're seeing here is the Jupyter notebook loaded in my local Jupyter environment. And if you're not familiar with Jupyter, it basically allows you to embed code amidst text, images, headings. So it makes it really easy to document your code. And you can see there's some pretty extensive documentation here. So when you're trying to create a web map, the first thing you'll need to do is import the required libraries. Most of these I needed only to prepare the data. But if you had already prepared the data and had it in, say, a shapefile on your hard drive, then probably the only one you would need is GeoPandas. I've already executed all the cells in this notebook, so everything's in memory. So I'm going to skip executing most of them until we get down to the web map part. All right. I said I was going to skip over the data, and I am, but I just wanted to mention what's included. So you can, well, let me scroll down. So there's census tract geographies from the Tiger program, which I retrieve from a zip file online. So you don't even have to pre-download it. That's kind of nice. Here's what the attributes look like once I've filtered some out. And then here's what the geographies look like. This is the census tracts for Franklin County, Ohio. I also pulled some variables from the census API, specifically related to commuting. You can see it's from table B08141. And these are some of the variables, again, at the tract level. I loaded the Central Ohio Bikeways file from Morpse's ArcGIS REST API. I wanted to mention that this is also a pretty good tutorial for obtaining data automatically from these various services. You can see I'm fetching this on the fly from the API. So if you've been interested in trying to do that, this might be a good model for you. And the Bikeways file looks like this. You can see there's a few different colors here. The pink ones are in this map are the proposed routes, and I'll explain why that might be useful later on for this particular example. And then finally, I did one more step, which was to join the census variables to the geographies. So here you can see the percentage of workers who live in a household where no vehicle is available. And I'll symbolize that in different ways in the web map. All right. So now we finally get to the key stuff, which is the web map itself. I basically have 3 attempts here to prototype the web map. And so the first one that I wanted to show you is minimally configured. This is what the map looks like out of the box with two layers loaded, specifically those census variables and the bikeways file. And this is how you do it. It's really easy. I have that enriched data that has the tracked polygons with the variables. And it's in a GeoPandas geodata frame, which is just a data structure. But when you add this .explore command or method to it and specify which column you want to symbolize, it puts it on the map. Let me zoom in so you can see it a little bit better. Sorry, it's kind of cluttered up with the bikeways, but hopefully you can see there's this yellow spot, which is an area of a high percentage of households with no vehicles available. And then there's these bluer areas where there are fewer households with no vehicles available. And then I simply did that again. So I used the explore command again, whoops, with the bike infrastructure network. And I added it to the same map. So they're both overlaid there. And in this case, I'm showing the facility status. So once again, the pink lines are the proposed routes. And the reason I chose these layers is it's kind of a contrived example, but you might be able to use such a web map to inspect the different routes that are proposed and perhaps choose the ones that are in areas where households have fewer vehicles available. Okay, so you might look at this map and think, well, geez, that's kind of it's kind of difficult to see. Maybe you don't like the colors. It's kind of distracting as I move the mouse around and these pop-ups appear. So what can we do to make it a little bit better? So that's where the second attempt comes in. And you can see in this case, I've added some more customizations. So some of this has to do with styling. So you can see I chose a different color map that gives it this green and yellow color. Let me see if I can scroll down so you can see the, there you go. So you can see the color scale. So maybe that's a little bit more useful, a little clearer. And I changed the opacity to fully opaque so that maybe you can see the colors more clearly. Obviously, the downside is that you can't see the base map behind it. For the trails, I chose a different color scheme for that, and I increased the thickness of the lines to make them a little bit thicker. So let me just zoom in. All right. So maybe a little bit more contrast between the lines and the polygons. Maybe you like the color scheme better, maybe not. I actually don't like that color scheme as well, and I don't like that it's fully opaque. So now in the third attempt, I customized a few more things. I went back to the original color scheme, but I added a simpler base map. So you can see now the base map is just shades of gray. So it's a little bit easier to see the color differences, I think. I also classified the data. This is a cool feature. So you can classify the data using several schemes and however many classes you like. And so it maybe makes it a little bit easier to tell like where those high need areas are. Oops, bear with me. So now there's more of the yellow areas because they've been grouped together. What else did I do here? Let's see. So I turned off the tooltips for the polygons. So now it's not quite as distracting, but I did leave on the tooltips for the bike routes. So you can hover over those to see what their status is. However, I still wanted to provide access to the polygons. So if you click on them, then you can see, you can still see those variables. And I set a default zoom. I turned off highlighting when you hover over the polygons, just to try and make it a little bit more user-friendly. All right, and I'm probably running out of time here, so let me keep moving. So let's say, maybe there's more that I could do to it, but let's say we like this third map the best. How do we get it out of Jupyter and make it stand on its own? And that's really easy. You just take the variable where the map is stored. Let me go back up for a minute. You can see that map was stored in map 3 when I originally created it. So you just take that variable and just use this .save method and give it a file name, and it writes it to the disk, to your hard drive. Now, I wanted to mention everything, all the code that underlies the web map, all of the data, everything is included in that HTML file. So it can take up a lot of space on disk, and it can also use up a lot of your memory if there's lots of detailed data in there. So you have to be a little bit careful about that. All right. Do I have enough time to do the publishing demo? Can somebody let me know? Or should I leave that to the reader?
Why don't we hold off on that for right now?
Okay.
Adam, and if we have time, we could go back to it.
That sounds good. Then maybe there's a time for a few questions.
Yeah. Any questions from the audience? You can drop them in the chat, or Brandon raised his hand.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, I need to pull up the chat. Sorry about that.
No, there's nothing in there, I don't think, right now.
Cool.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Adam, do you have any good resources for reading up on just like the basics of mapping with Python and GeoPandas in general?
Not really.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I'm actually in search of those resources myself to share with my team. I kind of picked up the skills gradually over time, so I never really used a single resource. But if anyone's aware of one, I would love to hear about it.
Cool. Likewise.
I guess before I adjourn, let me just show you all of this. So this is the content of that GitHub repository. And if you follow the steps in the notebook to publish in GitHub, then you can access the web map like this. I'll just show you at least how that works. And then I know my time is up. So it's your username.github.io, and then the name of the repository. And then if you called the web map index.html, you wouldn't have to type a file name. But since I didn't do that, I have to type webmap.html. And hopefully, you'll see that web map appear here. All right, so you all could access this link. This is available to everyone on the web. So that's a pretty easy way to publish your map when you're done with it. And if there's no other questions, thank you all for your attention. I appreciate it.
Cole, you're muted.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know how that happened. But yeah, thank you, Adam, for that demo. That was really useful. So yeah, next we'll go to Amanda and Cheryl. We're talking about the impact indicator story maps that their team built to support their evaluations of Baltimore's ARPA funded projects. So I'll hand it over to them.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I was on the wrong slide there. Very happy to be sharing this new dashboard that Binya created today. I'm going to give you some context on the dashboard itself. Cheryl's then going to jump into a bit of a demo showing you what we did and some of the story maps that we built out. And then we've got a quick slide on lessons learned to kind of wrap up. So, well before I arrived at Binya, we, along with other partners at the University of Baltimore, including the Jacob France Institute and the Schaefer Center for Public Policy, have been working with the Mayor's Office of Recovery Program, we call them MORP, to evaluate select American Rescue Plan Act funded projects. In Baltimore received many $million through the American Rescue Plan Act, and in my vantage point has invested in some very innovative programs across multiple topic areas. It's been exciting to see these programs come out, and it's also been exciting to be on the other side as looking at how do we measure their impact over time. So one part of this project and a part of our larger evaluations was to develop out impact indicators. And fundamentally, these were concepts to track how funded projects are improving outcomes for key quality of life measures in Baltimore. And we've worked with the MORP team to really create a framework where ARPA investments, to measure where ARPA investments have been made and to anticipate how conditions will change in the coming years. And so fundamentally, a lot of the ARPA projects, they're not going to have this immediate impact. It's things like infrastructure, roads, rec centers. And so there might be like a small short-term impact. What we really want to do is set up a framework so that we can track impact over time to see how sort of recovery has improved, but more broadly, was this ARPA funding really a catalyst for either future investment or change within the city? And I think one of the kind of fundamental things that took the longest amount of time in this project was really sort of setting the guideposts for how do we select indicators. So if there are three things that define what an impact indicator is, the first one is measurability. And that's to what extent does the ARPA investment demonstrate tangible impact at the neighborhood or city level? We really want to be able to make a connection between the impact at a geography. Can we measure it? The second one is data availability. One, can we get this data? Is it available to us? Are people willing to share it with us? And two is geospatial data available. So can we link program to place in a way that we can visualize it? And three, this is probably the trickiest one, is there a clear logical relationship between ARPA investments and the proposed impact indicators? So if we are making a housing investment on sort of restoring vacant houses, a clear link there would be a reduction in VBNs over time. So most of what we did in sort of these initial stages when working with MORP is trying to figure out exactly what we were measuring, defining how we would measure it, and then really trying to see if the data would be available for us to actually measure it. And with that said, I'm going to move to Cheryl to walk us through the dashboard. I have it on a splash page right now, but Cheryl, just tell me which one you want to go to.
All right. Well, so to get us started, I'm going to put the link to our overall hub page. So I'm just going to very briefly kind of describe that. And Amanda, I think it would be great to get us squared away on that. And I have a favorite of the impact indicators, so I might want us to highlight that, which I'll speak about in a moment, but measuring digital equity. So through a series of online interactive story maps, you can explore various quality of life measures in Baltimore's neighborhoods relating to housing, digital equity, employment levels, capital investments prior to and during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so given really our expertise in sharing open data, the visualizations and the narratives using Esri and ArcGIS online products, we decided to host these impact indicators on a hub site. So the city of Baltimore is also a user of various Esri technologies. And so this has really enabled us to have some greater collaboration and ease of tech, given that we have a lot of the same platforms and ability to share content through the ArcGIS online groups. So this landing page serves as that jumping off point for the story maps. And as you can see, we currently have 6 that are currently publicly available. And we're working with the Mayor's Office of Recovery Programs to coordinate release of additional indicators later this year. So you can go through, scroll, see those links there. And towards the bottom of the page, of course, we provide general language about the purpose of the impact indicators. And this is really geared towards that general audience who might be curious, like what are these? What does it mention? And so really just kind of reiterating what Amanda has shared, it's all about looking at overall community baseline measures and overlaying the work of the city agencies and the funded programs. So it's a combination of baseline indicators and that action through ARPA investments. So as I mentioned, I do have a favorite. So let's dig into that one story map on digital equity. So when you come into these story maps, you will find that each contain a few key elements. So first and foremost, we have some great stock images from the city of Baltimore celebrating internet connectivity. And as you go through, you'll find we have things like a key takeaway. So here, as a result of ARPA-funded programs, nearly 30 neighborhoods in Baltimore now have digital access related programs, all specifically geographically concentrated in these areas of low digital inclusion. So next up, we provide a definition of that impact indicator. So this particular measure is an index that's made up of 3 different components, all from the American Community Survey, that describe different ways of accessing the internet. Next up, we provide a summary and a little bit of that context information about an indicator, and then transition to a visualization. So here, as it loads, we see a map, and this is a map that is showing the 2020 Digital Equity Index. And so each of these story maps are interactive and enable users, again, to see that indicator. So in this case, shaded that red to green, where red is indicating very low digital inclusion to that darkest shade of green, indicating high, okay? But you can also see that overlay of actions, those investments. And so here we can see outlined in black specific neighborhoods that have had investments, as well as additional points. So in this case, the points are showing locations of current and planned rollout of public Wi-Fi. So getting folks connected. So all of these things are clickable. So you can see addresses, you can see details, and we provide a little bit of text that as you scroll through the page will describe ultimately what is included on the map, how to interpret it, what all of the symbols kind of mean. And then we also provide details about the funded programs. So as you're going through, this particular one lists out just specific funding themes, as well as some of the names of the funded programs and those grant recipients here in Baltimore City. So a lot of information in this one. And believe me, we actually cut that down a little bit. So it could have gone on for quite a while. But ultimately, just having this information available for folks visually and through the narrative to really just have that glimpse and see all of the great work that is going on, led by the city, led by these funded organizations. And so lastly, we conclude each story map with some links to additional resources, which can be a mixture of data sets, reports, and in some cases, other websites. The story maps in general, if you need to hop around, we've got some navigation at the top, which will enable you to bounce around to different components of the story map. And then lastly, that ARPA impact indicators text in that upper left-hand corner will take you on back to that main page. So gotta love the ease of navigation with Esri and their tools. So eventually, with the support of data partners and working with the city, we will have additional story maps kind of covering themes around COVID-19 response, health services, business and household assistance as well. So I'll turn it back to Amanda with just a few kind of key takeaways and comments for you all in our peer network.
I've muted myself, but now I am back. So I thought that this would be a good opportunity. This is a fairly new project for us to just really reflect on some of the lessons that we've learned from this project. The first is really definitions. Most of the work that was done on this project, like I said, that preceded me, was really about how do we identify, measure concepts, indicators, calculations, and data availability. There was a much bigger list than this, even the 6 that we have out and the maybe 12 that we will eventually put out. But these were the ones where we really felt like we could build robust measures and visualize them in a way that people could readily understand. And I will also say that having really clear definitions has helped keep the project on scope. We recently have a newer data manager with the Mayor's Office of Recovery Programs who really wanted to expand the project a little bit. And I think that once we really returned to having clear definitions and how we sort of got to this original list, it really helped clarify what these were and what they were communicating. Secondly, I would say data quality. Like we're really seeing the quality of data that we can put out there is really variable between agency to agency. This is not surprising in any way, but I do think is a challenge when we are trying to communicate something in a standardized way. We really wanted all of these maps to be at the tract level, or so that we could measure out QCTs, which is a priority for the Mayor's Office of Recovery Programs. And in some cases, we're just not able to match with tract level data for this. So it's been a bit of a challenge to kind of keep consistency between maps while also telling the story. And the third point is really more on that consistency, but in a different vein, is that this is a very public and at times controversial funding program in Baltimore City. There's a lot of perception of scrutiny around these funds. And this is a step on the mayor's office to promote transparency and really sort of engage people in how this money is being spent and showing how it's improving people's lives. But with that, we've had to be, I think, extremely careful about making sure that the information that we put out matches what agencies are making public about their funded programs. And that is not always the case. For instance, with the digital equity map that we just showed, we built that initial base layer. But I think at this point would love it to not be at a zip code level. We'd prefer to look at those indices at the census tract or the CSA level, but it's very important for the BSIT, which is our information technology office, to keep that consistency with the zip codes. Secondly, we get a lot of internal data about maybe a project status that doesn't match what's on a press release that was released 6 months ago. And there's been a lot of back and forth about what are the right numbers, what are the official numbers, how do we sort of make sure that consistency is maintained in the communication strategy around this funding. So there's definitely a lot more sensitivities and sort of communication challenges than I think we thought or were planning for when we went into this project. But overall, we're really satisfied with our first set, and you can look forward to the next set later this summer. But we will take questions or move on to the next presentation.
Yeah, well, thanks, y'all. That's an impressive amount of detail and really, really well presented. So thank you for that. Yeah, I just want to make sure we give Brandon enough time, but we can, we have like a minute or two for any questions anyone has. I mean, I had one if no one else will.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is a talkative bunch, gosh.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, so you said the bulk of the project time went into, defining indicators. I know you mentioned to keep the project on scope, but what were some of the considerations that went into like that amount of work and clearing out the definitions?
Cheryl, you suffered through this. I will let you take it.
Well, I would say, this was a project that started off very broad. So I think some very initial themes and ideas around what the impact indicators could measure, enabled us to have a really good starting point, but it really wasn't until we started seeing some of the program data sets that, we really started thinking about what is the message, what is the story that we're trying to craft with the city to really kind of explain and accurately kind of get at, is this funded program, and each funded program kind of has its own, tasks and goals of making sure that that's something that we might be able to, start seeing if the needle gets moved. So, here in Baltimore, and I imagine, this is the case elsewhere too, if you want to talk about vacancy, well, we can look at census vacancy. We can look at vacant and abandoned buildings. We could look at the HUD USPS no-stat data. But which of these three data sets is really going to get at that, that topic of vacancy? But when you start to see, okay, so vacancy remediation is coming in through the form of demolitions, some of these other measures, it's not that they're not as important, but in that case, you would want to look at those vacant building notices to see literally those properties that are falling down. And, that's kind of that process that went into defining these definitions. So, wanting to be very open to, exploring as many data sets that could be available, but choosing what is updatable and the most relevant.
Yeah, definitely makes a lot of sense. I love the focus on relevance to stakeholders. Okay. Well, yeah, I do want to give Brandon enough time. So we'll go ahead and hand it over to Brandon to talk about his web listings or rental listings rather database.
Thanks, Nicole. And thanks, Amanda and Cheryl, for a great intro. I'll be fast. Let's see. Let's make sure I can share the right screen. Are you seeing not our studio?
Right.
Awesome. Amazing. All right. You're seeing presenter view, aren't you?
Yes.
We'll run down like this. It'll just be easier. So I'm going to present on the Metro Boston Rental Listings Collaboration, which is run out of MAPC. Broadly, what the objective of this organization or this project is to do is to create, it's sort of like twofold. We want to create a collaborative of municipalities in the region that addresses a research question and a policy question that is really important for both municipal policymakers, but also regional planners and state policymakers writ large, and also to collect information about rents that is up to date, more accurate than other sources, and gives us some flexibility with grouping them as geographies that make sense to people and planners in their work. And so some of the motivation for this, which I alluded to, is that the data that's currently available through the census is not as granular and or up to date as we would like. The rent values typically don't represent what market asking prices are because they're through a survey of people who are already paying rents. And so there is a distinct lag at when the survey is being taken in the first place, but then even when the data is published, there's a lag to that information because you're getting ACS data a year or two behind when you would be trying to do the analysis. And so there's that lag. There's also the fact that it's being averaged over several years. And so you don't really know what is up to date. Like, what are you going to be paying for rent when you go to renew your lease next year? And then private sources are typically quite opaque about their methods. There's not really, unless you, before you purchase the data, you don't really know how they're putting that data together. And afterwards, you're usually quite dissatisfied with how they're putting the data together. And so it's not worth spending all that money to bring in data that is not necessarily up to the par of what your organization, what municipalities expect. And so our solution was to scrape rental listings data from the internet. We have currently a system that scrapes information from CADMapper and Craigslist. From there, we look at the data, deduplicate it because people can post their rental listing several times on Craigslist or CADMapper. Clean up the information a little bit, make sure that we have the right asking price, the right number of bedrooms, the right location or about the right location, and then classify whether or not it's like an entire apartment building for rent, like a 3-bed apartment, or if it's just someone subletting a single unit. Those are different things. We summarize that up by means and medians, by different geographies like neighborhoods or zip codes or census tracts, visualize the trends over time, and also create maps for where those rental listings are taking place. And then there are some other bells and whistles that we put together, like short analyses every month or so. And so what this looked like I said, this is a long-term project, and we have presented to NNIP about this in the past. But we first started doing this project as an individual project for Somerville, Massachusetts, where we collected that data, put together a report, visualized the information, put it out there. And over time, it sort of gained a lot of steam with local municipalities about collecting the information and using it in their own project planning. And so in about 2018, 2019 is when we established this collaboration, which includes Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, Quincy, and Arlington, which are all sort of around the Boston area. And we would publish this information on a quarterly basis. When COVID occurred and people were moving out of their houses because they had to, or people were facing evictions or housing instability because of job losses or whatnot. The municipalities wanted to have that information on a monthly basis. And thankfully, we were already collecting it at a monthly basis, just aggregating it quarterly. So we had the information. So we started publishing that data. In 2021, we started recruiting some new members. I think Arlington was the latest one to come in. And then over the past year and a half, we've been developing a web portal for our users to access the data instead of me putting it on SharePoint and emailing it to them. And so briefly going over what the methods look like is we touch on this. We essentially, like I said, scrape the data, take that, compare each individual record's title of the rental listing and its asking price and the number of bedrooms to make sure that we are actually getting one rental listing per observation. We sort of take that information and this is the best way. We calculate how far off some of those rents are from median just to make sure we're taking out some outliers. Like there's a lot of times where a extra zero will be added onto the asking price because someone misposted it. And so something would be $22,000 instead of $2,200. But there are also cases where there are very expensive buildings where rents are quite high. Like one Dalton, which is one of the big condo towers downtown. And so like a rental listing for, $8,000, $9,000 isn't necessarily wrong. It's just in an expensive place. And so we pull that data, clean it up, and present it to folks. Some of the issues that we have, or some limitations we have with the information, is that we're only using two sources. The demographic of people posting on Craigslist is very specific. There are people who post elsewhere that are probably more representative of what rental listings look like, and that's something that we're working on in the future. Craigslist data doesn't come with an address, it just comes with the general vicinity of where it is, and so our geocoding is has something to be desired to it, but it puts it in the right place generally. And sometimes the API which we scrape from is a bit unstable, or rental list, like the number of listings decline. Like we hardly use PadMapper anymore because there's only a few listings that get posted on there. Let me skip ahead. And some of these things have gone into applications already. We have Cambridge puts together a data dashboard on their open data portal that is free to the public to use. They can download the information, look at different trends themselves. We provide this to city planners as well as planning boards and select boards to make decisions about housing development and zoning policies during town meeting every year. We've done internal projects where we're working on housing production plans or rezoning plans with the municipality, and we're using the data to sort of give them a good sense of what they should do for future policy. And it was instrumental in giving at least these municipalities some transparency about what's happening in their boundaries during the pandemic when information was necessary to quickly make decisions. Some things that we're working on very briefly, improving the deduplication. Our process was a little bit antiquated, and so we're updating the methods for comparing strings of the titles to be better able to get actual, like the true number of rental listings. We're also improving some keyword identification of like single bedroom units within a larger building so that we can get rid of sublets and just present full rental listings. And we're also expanding the web portal a little bit to accommodate some of the needs that our municipalities have. They like to have like an API that they can put to Power BI so they can present the data themselves and however they want to. And we're also working on putting together new scrapers. To Leah's point about NNIP members helping NNIP members, Mike Henderson at Case Western provided a Zillow scraper to us that we, in the next year, will adapt for our own use and then integrate it into this process, hopefully. Yeah. So that's what's going on.
All right. Thank you, Brandon. That was also great. Yeah, we're almost, we got, 2 minutes. Leah mentioned in the chat, but we will send around this recording along with slides and any other materials that our speakers want to share through that. But yeah, in the couple minutes we have left, any questions for Brandon? Yeah, Amanda.
I have 1 million questions, but I will try to be quick with just one. In that, what was it, last week, 2 weeks ago, we started getting some action around price fixing and renting in cities across the US, which would be cool if it actually something happens out of that. But thinking that a tool like this could be really useful in some of the price fixing conversations that are happening around renting and sort of the tools that leasing agencies are using in order to do that price fixing. Not sure if it would show up in the Craigslist or pad one. But wondering if that's anything you've been thinking about or thinking about the policy application.
To be able to use this to supplement some analysis into either looking at the price fixing or just like getting up-to-date rental information for a specific address. I think in the back of my head long term that this project could be used to encourage a municipality to take on creating a database themselves, or like passing an ordinance to require landlords who rent their buildings to file with the city or register, so that like we don't have to try our best to scrape the websites to get that information. We can just look at the city and use that as an accountability measure. But yeah, always open to new ideas and applications for this.
I also
Great.
have like 1,000 questions, but
Yeah.
we're out of time.
Yeah, unfortunately we are, but again, we will be sharing the recording and slides with the group. But yes, thank you so much to all our speakers. This, I think, a great showcase, and thank you to all of our attendees. So until the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
Please call. Thanks, Leo.